Like the Deshaun Watson cases where there were 20 plus plaintiffs and they weren't really sure who the people were who were making the claims. In this case, Shannon Sharpe knows exactly who it is because there had been, and it's clear from the statement issued by his lawyer, Lanny Davis, there had been some pre-litigation efforts to try to resolve this.
It started like a slow burn before erupted into an inferno. One moment, Shannon Sharpe was the untouchable sports titan turned podcast king, riding the momentum of his booming club's shay empire. The next, he was in front of microphones and cameras, dropping claims so incendiary they sent shockwaves from locker rooms to Hollywood Hills. In his telling, the reason his career was suddenly under siege wasn't about the headlines in his own legal battles. It was because he refused to play along with two of the most protected names in the entertainment world. He named them plainly: Oprah Winfrey and Sean Diddy, Combs. And according to Sharpe, they didn't just want him quiet, they wanted his platform dismantled and his name dragged through the dirt for good.
Once again, I've never seen anybody handle a situation worse than Shannon and his team. Like they just handled it wrong from the whole beginning.
Yeah, well,
we've seen plenty of celebrity feuds, but what Sharpe described sounded less like gossip and more like a coordinated strike from the highest echelons of influence. He claimed the trouble began when he caught wind of certain stories about backroom arrangements, whispered agreements, and a world of secrets hidden in plain sight, and refused to bury them. From his perspective, that's when the machine turned on him. Suddenly, whispers became headlines, meetings were canceled, doors closed, deals that were practically inked evaporated without warning. He painted a picture of powerful insiders using invisible levers to choke off his reach, framing it as part of a conspiracy so powerful it could destroy careers overnight. What made it even more chilling was Sharpe's insistence that these weren't just PR grudges. In his account, Oprah and Diddy's alleged moves against him were part of a much larger pattern, one that involved silencing anyone who wouldn't bow to the unwritten rules of their circles. He claimed he'd been warned, indirectly and directly, to stop digging. He didn't. And the result, he says, was an all-out campaign to paint him as damaged goods. If the aim was to scare him into submission, he didn't show it. Instead, he began talking about what he called the blacklist. The very word carries weight in Hollywood lore, but Sharpe's description made it sound like something far more strategic and ruthless. According to the rumors he amplified, Oprah maintained an invisible ledger. Not on paper, but in the minds and phone contacts of the gatekeepers who mattered. On it were the names of those who had crossed her, embarrassed her, or simply refused to bend to her will. Monique's long, bitter standoff with Oprah became Exhibit A in the way Sharpe framed it. We know Monique has spoken for years about how her career nosedived after she refused to do unpaid promotion for Precious at the Cannes Film Festival, telling Oprah plainly she had her own work and family obligations. Within months, she was labeled difficult, and the roles dried up. Sharpe positioned himself as the latest addition to that unspoken list, a warning to anyone thinking of stepping out of line. From there, the focus turned to Diddy, and the picture Sharpe painted was even darker. In his telling, those infamous celebrity parties that seemed like over-the-top networking events for the A-list had a different function entirely. Whispers in certain circles described them not as celebrations but as initiation grounds, carefully staged, tightly controlled environments where the price of admission wasn't just a +1, but the surrender of leverage over your own image. There were accounts, Sharpe hinted, of elaborate setups, masked figures, rooms draped with strange symbols, guest pressure to participate in compromising situations that would be remembered and possibly recorded for future use. The kind of scenarios that could keep someone compliant for years.
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
Those whispers gained fuel from lawsuits already swirling around Diddy, especially the most recent allegations that stripped away the glitz and exposed the raw mechanics of what plaintiffs called freak-off gatherings. In some of the most lurid descriptions, people were dressed in bizarre costumes, paraded through rooms while crowds looked on, and made to endure situations designed to humiliate. The lawsuits named celebrities who were allegedly present in the background, watching even if they weren't accused of direct involvement, which only deepened the sense of a hidden network operating in plain view. Sharpe's accusations connected these dots with unnerving confidence. He implied that these events weren't just about indulgence or even control. They were about building an insurance policy of secrets, ensuring that anyone who stepped inside those walls could be reeled back in if they ever got too independent. In his framing, declining to take part wasn't just a social snub. It marked you as an outsider, and in Hollywood's upper strata, being on the outside could mean the end of your career.
So Terrence Howard appeared on the PBD podcast with Patrick McDavid, and the episode, this premiered on April 4th. Definitely making the rounds because in this episode, Terrence Howard describes an interaction with Diddy where he says that he believes that Diddy was trying to have with him. Let's take a listen.
The more Sharpe talked, the more it felt like we were hearing not just a personal grievance, but a blueprint of how influence gets weaponized. He described how a conversation that starts with an offer, an exclusive invite, a can't-miss opportunity, can end with unspoken obligations and silent threats. He didn't claim to have been inside one of Diddy's most notorious private events himself, but he alluded to knowing what happened to people who had, and how the leverage from those nights could be used years later, long after the lights and cameras were gone. In this telling, Oprah's alleged blacklist and Diddy's alleged initiation gatherings weren't isolated tools. They were part of the same playbook. Keep your allies loyal, keep your rivals quiet, and keep enough secrets locked away to crush anyone who tries to step outside the lines. It's a theory that, if true, would explain why so few people at Sharpe's level ever risk speaking this openly. The implication was clear. By talking now, he was lighting a match in a room soaked with gasoline.
Don't trust nobody. In Hollywood, specifically, when you get there, a lot of people don't know how to say no. That's the difference between New York City and California.
And still, there were moments in his recounting when he seemed almost amused by how predictable the blowback was. He suggested that the smear tactics had been lifted from the same tired script used against other troublemakers. That the moment someone starts pulling at certain threads, the leaks about their own past conveniently start flooding the press. That parallel wasn't lost on anyone watching, especially given the timing of the most recent stories about Sharpe's personal life. The message, intentional or not, was that the same power structures he was accusing were now moving against him in real time. From there, the conversation spiraled into the stranger territory of the conspiracy rumors that have swirled around both figures for years. He touched briefly on the chatter about Oprah's association with figures later accused of extreme misconduct, like John of God, the Brazilian healer, later convicted of assaulting hundreds of women, and about long-running speculation tying Diddy to a broader web of exploitation claims stretching back decades. He didn't present them as proven facts. He didn't have to. Simply mentioning them in the same breath as his own allegations was enough to set the internet comment sections ablaze.
On Easter Sunday, a lawsuit was filed in state court in Nevada against Hall of Fame tight end Shannon Sharpe because he has become such a massive media star, especially in the past few years. The lawsuit is going to attract.
By this point, the tension in his narrative was palpable. This wasn't just about a sports commentator feuding with entertainers. It was being framed as a direct challenge to the unwritten rules of an industry where the same handful of names seem to survive every scandal untouched. And, in Sharpe's telling, that survival isn't about luck or public goodwill, it's about control. The kind of control that starts with knowing which calls to make to suppress a story, and ends with being able to make a person disappear from the public conversation entirely. It was hard not to notice how his voice sharpened when he returned to the blacklist idea. He claimed it wasn't just about blocking people from jobs, it was about turning them into cautionary tales. You don't just vanish, you get reshaped into a punchline, a tabloid headline, a warning. He even suggested that in some cases, the same hands pulling the strings on your downfall could later extend a lifeline, offering you a comeback that came at the cost of total obedience. The way he told it, it sounded less like Hollywood and more like a closed circle regime.
And by the way, the judge doesn't know what she's talking about. I mean,
by the way, there are a lot of people clamoring for Wendy to actually get back on the air and to have a show again.
When did this judge become Roger Ebert? I mean, I'm serious. Wendy Williams is a hot commodity right now. I can tell you from our Tubi documentary, it attracted a lot of attention. She's done interviews with major outlets.
And then came the suggestion that these world's daytime talk royalty and hip-hop empire overlapped more than anyone outside could guess. He hinted at shared circles of influence, at quiet meetings in mansions far from cameras, at mutual favors traded in shadows. It was in this overlap, he implied, where the real decisions got made. Not in boardrooms, but in private rooms where the stakes were whispered, not written down. We were left with an image of a man standing on a very small patch of safe ground, surrounded by forces that could, at any moment, close in completely. But in Sharpe's mind, the danger was the point. If what he was saying was even half true, it meant the iceberg under Hollywood's polished surface was far larger than anyone wanted to admit. And that chipping away at it came with a cost most people weren't willing to pay.
And she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle.
In this world, apologies aren't just about remorse. They're currency, bargaining chips in a high-stakes game of image control. We've watched how a carefully timed "I'm sorry" can open closed doors, and how silence can slam them shut for good. Monique's decade-long battle is a prime example. She actually has a recording of Tyler Perry admitting he wronged her, even expressing intent to apologize. But instead of that apology being offered publicly, the conversation shifted into conditions and caveats. She could only get the meeting if her husband stayed out of the room and if she apologized to him and Oprah first. That's not reconciliation, that's negotiation. And while Perry's recorded regret sits as proof of conscience, Oprah's absence in that conversation speaks volumes to those who see silence as a calculated move. It's a stark contrast to the scorched earth PR playbook we've seen from Diddy's camp. Faced with a tidal wave of lawsuits and criminal charges, he hasn't stepped into the public arena to admit fault. He's dug trenches. Every denial, every legal counterpunch is framed as a stand against lies. The effect is the same. When there's no apology, there's no official acceptance of wrongdoing, and the narrative remains contested. For the accusers, that's a wound that stays open. For the accused, it's a shield, one that can be held indefinitely as long as allies keep repeating the talking points.
I'm sorry, I'm just really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
What makes the weaponization of apology so potent is the emotional toll it takes on those seeking them. Monique's been carrying this for years, waiting for a moment of acknowledgement that may never come. The longer it drags on, the easier it is for her opponents to frame her persistence as bitterness rather than survival. That's the hidden cruelty of this tactic. You don't have to prove someone wrong if you can convince the public they're obsessed. And in Hollywood, where the perception of grace is almost as valuable as the reality of it, refusing to apologize can be a way to maintain untouchable status. Sharpe has clearly taken notes on how these narratives play out. The difference is he's positioning himself as the disruptor, the one willing to burn bridges and risk the fallout. He's hinted that if the pressure on him doesn't ease, more names and more secrets will surface. Depending on who you ask, that's either courage or opportunism. On one hand, he could be the rare insider willing to blow the whistle, taking on figures most wouldn't dare confront. On the other, it could be a desperate bluff from someone whose own legal troubles are growing heavier by the day.
His attorney offered that up publicly. To me, her turning it down shows that it's not a money grab. No, it shows that it's a bigger shakedown.
That's where the moral fog thickens. We can't ignore that while Sharpe is accusing others of operating in darkness, he's also fending off accusations himself. Accusations he says are fabricated, but that remain active in court. The overlap is messy. If he leaks damaging information about others, is it a noble act of transparency or a distraction from his own headlines? The truth could be both, which is exactly why the public can't look away. It's the same paradox that's defined Hollywood for decades. The hero and the villain can wear the same face, depending on which angle you're standing from. In this battle, the stakes extend far beyond reputations. For those who have lived through the machine's punishments, blacklists, media character assassinations, quietly shelved projects, the arrival of someone willing to talk is a rare opportunity, but even they have to ask, if Sharpe is the messenger, can his message survive the weight of his own baggage? We've seen this play out before. A high-profile figure promises revelations, only for the conversation to turn into an autopsy of their personal life instead. That's the danger of speaking up in an ecosystem designed to dismantle its dissenters.
And looks at Wendy and says, you know, you had a great career. Your career is over. It is never coming back. You're done. Why would a judge?
The industry is watching this dance with a kind of nervous stillness. If Sharpe follows through on his threats to release more information, the dominoes could fall in unpredictable directions. We know from past scandals that once one well-placed accusation sticks, others feel safer to come forward. And if those accounts involve people higher on the food chain than even Oprah or Diddy, then the entire balance of power could shift. The fear among the elite isn't just about exposure. It's about losing the ability to decide who gets exposed and when. We've also seen how these shifts can happen fast. One week, a name is untouchable. The next, they're trending for all the wrong reasons. What's different now is the speed at which evidence, real or alleged, can surface. We live in an era where a voice note, a leaked text thread, or an old video clip can detonate a carefully curated legacy in hours. That's why the quiet among certain circles right now feels less like indifference and more like preparation. People aren't ignoring this story, they're bracing for the aftershocks.
This is one of the most outrageous things I have heard in a long, long time.
In a case that has been filled with...
And there's another layer to the unease, the possibility that Sharpe isn't alone in what he knows. If others in his network have seen or heard similar things, his going public could inspire them to confirm his accounts, either anonymously or on record. That kind of collective push would be far harder to dismiss as one man's vendetta. It would also raise the stakes for anyone considering retaliation, because targeting one person is easy. Silencing a wave is not. In the end, the question isn't just whether Sharpe is telling the truth, it's whether Hollywood is ready for the consequences if he is. Once certain doors are opened, they don't close again. If the blacklist is real, who else is on it? If the initiation rituals are as compromising as described, how many household names are holding secrets they can never admit to? And if the industry's most influential figures really are pulling strings to shape who thrives and who vanishes, then the conversation we're having now is just the surface of something far deeper.
I can't wait. I can't wait for everybody to find out what's really been going on in the background.
Because right now, the walls are closing in. The truth, or at least the version of it that's been kept hidden, is unraveling faster than anyone expected. And if this is what's already come to light, what's waiting in the shadows could make the current headlines look tame. So we have to ask, when the next wave of revelations hits, will it topple the very names that built the system? Or will the machine find a way to survive again? Drop your thoughts below because this storm is only getting started, and until next time, stay sharp and stay watching.